All right, everybody. This is the How to Hunt Deer podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Dan Johnson. Sitting across from me is my man, Jason Thibodeau. Jason, what's up, dude?
Not much, I guess. We got Christmas break here, and then they're finally putting up walls on this addition that was supposed to be done before Christmas. So
Right.
I guess, hey, that's how it goes.
Better late than never. One of those types of deals.
Yeah. Better
Yeah.
late than never, and yeah. So
Yeah. I'll tell you this. I don't know. So that's what we're hearing in the background this morning is a crew
yes.
putting up walls.
Yeah, there's like 5 guys out there, and they literally just started probably 10 minutes ago. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
So this is as real life as it's going to get. We got a construction crew upstairs working on a new addition so that you got this big family. You're turning into one, like two families turning into one family. So then you got room for your baby that's coming. When is the due date, by the way?
So,
baby?
Okay. So, yeah, let's go back. So my wife's here today because she's off for Christmas break, and then all 5 kids are here because they're off for Christmas break. And then, obviously, yes, like you said, she's pregnant. She's due May 20th. So we'll find out January 6th what we're gonna have.
Okay.
So,
all right, that's cool.
Yeah.
Dude, all of my kids are sick. Everybody in our house is just not 100%. I think it all kind of stemmed from this wrestling tournament we went to where I had to there was all these little kids and we would weigh them and then they would put their weight you had to write their weight on their hand and then you had to match them up with what they were. And all the weights, like the weights that they were at. And you had to create like a A1, A2, A3, A4, and so forth and so on. And dude, these kids were like licking their fingers and picking their nose and snot. And then I had to grab their hands to write on marker on the back of their hands. So then we could, bracket them accordingly. And oh my God, so many people in our club walked away from that tournament sick. I was one of them. And then I'm sure through school or that tournament or something, that all got passed on to the rest of the family. And now we had one of the biggest tournaments of the year that the only one who wrestled was my youngest son. And my oldest boy, he has a fever of 100. My daughter, she's got a fever of over 100. And so my wife was up all night last night hacking, and that meant that I didn't sleep. So I've been up since about 3:30 this morning, and I started drinking coffee at about 5. And so I'm going to crash at some point today, and I'm going to take a nap. I'm just going to let you know, I'm taking a nap and I ain't doing shit this afternoon.
Yeah. I don't blame you on that.
Yeah.
We were going to potentially sleep in at some point over Christmas break, but I have a hard time doing that anyways. Going back to wiping hands, licking fingers, and all that stuff, like you were just saying, so for the past couple of weeks, I've been spending time with preschoolers, 15 to 18 preschoolers in a room. And if you have any idea what that looks like, this time of year with snot hanging down to your lip and all that, what they do with their fingers from there, is a whole nother story. But it's, it's funny because, they're kids, they're cute, they're all that, but at some point it's like, you guys are gross.
They're disgusting too.
Yeah, you're disgusting. So there is that to do. But yeah, outside of that, no, I get a couple weeks off here with the family, Christmas and New Year's, and look forward to a couple things we might do, and then a couple projects around the house. So
yeah, I was hoping everybody would be healthy this week, but it just so happens that it's not working. It's not going to work. And we're recording this on the first day of Christmas break, which would be December 22nd. Tomorrow, we're supposed to all leave to go to my dad's house for a quick trip type Christmas, dinner or lunch or something like that. And dude, it's just not, I know tomorrow morning there's going to be people who are sick. And it always seems like there's a couple Christmases throughout the break that just, they don't happen, or not everybody shows up because everybody's sick. So it just sucks. Cause then if you're even a little bit sick and you show up, then someone else gets sick and then they blame it on you.
You play the blame game,
exactly.
My
Must
kid
have been
had a fever. Yep, I heard your kid had a fever 3 days ago, or
Hmm.
heard your kid was puking 2 weeks ago, so it's got to be
Right.
you, right?
Right. It's
Yeah,
got to be. It's
the
got to
old
be.
blame game.
Yep. Exactly.
Yep.
Um, I want to do something a little bit different today, but I want to start off
Okay.
by asking you if you've been out at all recently. And have you done any hunting recently?
Yeah, yeah. So Friday I was gonna go out. It looked pretty good and stuff, but I'll be honest with you. By the time I got done with my stuff in the morning, I literally had a case of the I'm not goings.
Yeah.
I wanted to spend the time with my wife. First off, we had an opportunity together. So, but second off, I just had I don't know. I wasn't in the mood, but
Hmm.
Sunday came around and I decided that I was going to take my kids. And my daughter actually had a pretty cool idea. She wanted to obviously experience some of this late season hunting, but she also wanted to eat, um, like a mountain house or a peak
Hmm.
refuel or something while sitting in the ground blind. Obviously with the scent of the food and stuff, I was a little reluctant on that. But I thought this is her idea and
Yeah.
this is her time to hunt. If this is what she wants to do, so we'll do it. So her and her brother and I went out last night and we took some peak refuel and took the jet boil and they got to experience like eating at camp, kind of like, when we go out west or whatever.
Yep.
And they enjoyed it.
Yep.
They really thoroughly enjoyed it. They ate their meals and everything. And we did end up seeing 6 deer. So that was good, but nothing came in close. So
That's awesome. Yeah. It's the little things like that that you like. Will it smell? Yeah, it's going to smell. But at the same time, it's just one of those things that they're going to, and that could be your thing, right? You and your daughter's thing, right? It could be your thing. You could go up and be
yep.
like, hey, you want to go out in the woods and eat a mountain house? Like that could be the thing.
Yeah.
Like that starts it
Yeah.
all. And something as
Yep.
simple as, in 10 years, she's like, yeah, I went out with my dad and we used to eat mountain houses and like out in the woods. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Well, and
think
it
that
was
would be fun.
I thought it was pretty cool, and obviously in the box blind, there's room for the three of us, maybe even one other person, but we have a buddy heater in there and stuff. Everybody sits back and relaxes, and when they're eating, I'm taking pictures of them, that I'll be able to share with them down the line, and I don't know, I thought it was pretty cool. It was a good
Yeah.
idea, and the other part of it too that I took away from it was this wasn't about me hunting. This wasn't about
Hmm.
my hunt. This is what she wanted to
Right.
do and chose to do.
Right.
So,
Right. Absolutely. Okay. Did you see a ton of movement? Did you see any movement?
we had two smaller fawns or does to the south of
Hmm.
us that came into some standing corn, and then we had four does off to the north of us that actually fed out into pit corn. So
Hmm.
nothing came in front of us, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. My trail cameras right now are pretty much just the local doe herds right now. I haven't
yeah,
had anything, maybe one or two 3 year olds, but no 4 year olds have been on camera. I have seen a couple. I've seen a couple deer that were way in the back that I couldn't necessarily make out, and so I'm thinking, hey, dude, I'm not right now interested in going and hunting. I don't know why.
yeah, yeah. I I've had some movement. It's been pretty sporadic. I'll be honest. I had one 2-year old last night, but outside of
Yeah.
that, I think gun season, gets a lot of those deer up and those
Hmm.
bigger ones up, and it moves them around, shifts them around a little bit. But once the people start to get back out of the woods, they just go back to where they were, and if they're not being
Yeah.
pressured, they're just going to stay there for the remainder of the winter if they can.
Right. They're going to just sit tight. Yeah. And I
Yeah,
think that
yeah,
there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that that goes on in this time of year where we are 100%. I mean, again, I want to talk to someone from the South and talk
hmm
to them here in the next couple weeks about what that looks like. But we're gonna be going to like back to 100% bed to food pattern right now. Uh, Standing crops, I mean, is the ticket. Other than that, I mean, I don't know. Which leads me to a thought that I had, and I wanted to share this with you.
okay,
by the time archery season is over every year, I have a like I like by now I'm just into wrestling, I'm into sports, I'm back into the grind, and it's very hard for me to get motivated to go back out again. In Iowa, they have a 4 or 5 day early muzzleloader season. So I've been thinking recently, it's like everybody is real excited about the muzzleloaders, like about the October timeframe, November timeframe. So why don't I just take advantage of that October timeframe, right? And go hunt
Yeah.
an early season muzzleloader. That would be my firearm. That would be my firearm tag for the year. So if I don't get anything, then there's nothing after archery season, which I don't hunt anyway. I haven't in the past. Yeah. So I feel like that would be an awesome opportunity for me to go out and try to get another buck with a muzzleloader. And so I don't know. I feel like I have a couple places where it would be benefit. Like I feel like I could get close to a couple deer, but at the same time, I don't want to ruin it for the rut, like going into a good spot hunting. I don't know. This is like I'm thinking out loud type of conversation that I've been having over the last couple days, because I really want to go hunting, but I also don't want to go hunting at the same time. And so I thought this early season muzzleloader would be a I don't know, an option for next year.
And maybe it doesn't make a difference, but you know, with a muzzleloader, you can reach out there a little bit further. I mean, is it possible that you can get into a spot, set yourself up to where you're not where you would be with your bow, but yet you're backed off a little bit to where maybe your pressure isn't as much as it would be with your bow?
Right. Right. Yeah.
If that makes any sense. You know, I mean, it's just a thought.
It allows you to hunt different type of terrain, like a little bit more wide open terrain.
Right.
I wouldn't be set up for like this 100-yard or like a 30-yard shot and in. I'd be up to potentially a 100-yard shot. And so outside of that, I don't know. It's more thinking on my part this time of year. I do that when I'm not hunting. So I'm just thinking about how to maximize all of my opportunities every year. And I think that might be an option for next year.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to buy pretty much all the tags that I can buy for gun season and archery season as well. I've never, I take that back. Maybe I've bought muzzleloader tags once, but I don't know. I mean, I look forward to this time of year because work-wise, I slow down, you know? So making time to go hunt this cold season is actually a good time. But, you know, just like this last week, most of our snow is gone, you know? So as we talked last week, the deer, they kind of spread out. Once that snow starts to melt and they're not really on a strict bed to food, you know, in one direction, they kind of get sporadic at where they're going, and it makes it harder to hunt them. And a difference this year, you know, this time of year, for us temperature wise, I mean, we're still going to get chilly or cold, you know, at the truck getting ready or at the truck taking stuff off and getting ready to go home, you know. So that whole process for us as a hunter, it wears on you, you know. And I think that's where I get the whole process of it, of getting ready, putting all the layers on, putting the hand warmers, toe warmers, all those things together to make a hunt. And then you get back to the truck and you're ready to take all the stuff off. And it's just more of a process.
That's a fact. That's 100% fact. All right. So, I mean, this time of year, again, it's not rocket science, and it's going to be bed to food patterns. You might even need to go out and do a little bit of scouting, whether you do or do not have snow. Watch for cold fronts. And I know that we're going to be, especially where we're at and across the Midwest, we're going to be in a warming pattern, like even to the high of 40s. 40, 45 up into the 50s, depending what part of the Midwest.
50.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And so, but there are a couple days in there where it drops down to like a high of mid 30s to high 30s. And so maybe that'll play a role in deer movement as well. Monitor your trail cameras, monitor your trail cameras, monitor your food sources, get out and scout, look for fresh tracks. All that stuff plays a role. All the stuff we've been talking about already this year. And yes, there's that. So now it's not rocket science, but now I want to talk a little bit about just some fun stuff. Okay. And
Okay.
I was sitting downstairs the other day and I was looking at all of my mounts of all the times I've been successful. And I want you to tell me a story, if you have one, of maybe a deer that you were really, really hunting hard for, maybe a particular buck, or I mean, hell, it could be a doe, a particular deer that you were hunting really hard for, and it did not turn out the way you wanted it to. Maybe you had a close encounter, maybe he didn't show up. Share a story with us.
Okay. Well, I mean, I've got a couple, but there's one in particular that kind of gets me when I think about it, really, because the property was unique in the fact that, as I've said, I hunt a lot of smaller properties, and this property was a 14-acre piece with a house positioned right in the middle of it. And in order to hunt it, you basically, the part of the agreement was you drive in the driveway and you park up by the house. So I had permission on this property for roughly 6 or 7 years, I think, before the owners had passed away. But second year in hunting it, I had a giant deer as a 2-year-old. He had a big split too and everything. And I'd seen him and I'm like, man, this deer is something special, but I wasn't going to shoot him as a 2-year-old, so I knew let's see what he looks like next year if he makes it. There's a lot of hunting pressure. I mean, there's a lot of timber in this area, a lot of draws and fingers and stuff, to kind of give the layout of it. But it's also positioned next to a pretty decent highway to where deer
Yeah.
get hit frequently. So it's kind of roll the dice with it. The next year comes around, I put cameras out and he pops up, and at this point, he's a 3-year-old and he's got 16 points on him and he's just starting to get that massive frame, and he's got a
Yeah.
little drop tine on the one side, just what you would want to shoot, And at that stage of my hunting career, I probably would have shot him as that 3-year-old with the 16 points. Lo and behold, he makes it through that year and he becomes a 4-year-old the following fall. We see him and he blew up again, but he kind of disappeared and never saw him during season, never saw him on foot. So I've seen this deer, at 2 years old, on the hoof, and then wait till he's 5 that next year. And now he's just giant 10 point, but he's got all sorts of, at his bases, all sorts of kickers and stuff. He's lost the drop tine, but he's 5 years old and now he's more frequent than ever. But we have this little 10 point that moves in. I say little 10 point, but he's probably 140-inch 10 point that moves in and becomes kind of like this bully to this deer. So I watch the cameras and I've got it figured out how I'm going to shoot this. We nickname, I should go back. We nicknamed this deer scoreboard, because he originally started at 3 years old with 16 points, and we thought, where's he going to go from there? So cameras start showing pictures of him, and he's very frequent. Cameras also show pictures of this 10 point who's very frequent. Scoreboard ends up getting breaks a couple times. And I'm like, okay, well, he's still 5 years old. I'd still probably shoot him at this point. I know exactly what day I need to be there because history is just repeating itself with this deer. And I didn't hunt that deer that year. I went to a different farm and I did end up shooting a deer that very same day, but I should have been where I had been putting my time in for 4 or 5 years. And as luck would have it, cameras end up showing this deer breaks half of his rack off, and uh, I think he broke every tine except for his brow tine and his main beam on one other side. So all of his points were gone at 5 years old. And I kept watching for him to see if he'd show up. I ended up hunting like January 4th that year, and in the neighbor's field, I see this deer come out, and he's literally got a brow tine and a main beam. And right away, I knew which deer it was. Watch the cameras, and I never see this deer again. And then in the spring, shed hunting season, I find a whole side that had been snapped off right after his brow tine. So that was kind of the end of the story, you know? I mean, I hunted him hard and I had a lot of pictures and a lot of intel and I knew exactly what day and what time he was going to come out and he did. I mean, he was in
Yep.
front of that camera 9 a.m., you know, November 10th. I can't remember exactly what year it
Yeah.
was, but yeah, so from 2 years old to 5 years old, I hunted him pretty hard, and then I got to say my goodbye January 4th that year that he was 5, so,
Yeah.
um and then, like I said, I kinda got a little memory of him with finding that broken antler of him, so it
Yeah.
was a it's an awesome story, but it's bittersweet, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see here. I got one. I've told that story about shipwreck 100 times, so I'm going to tell a different one. And this one is actually of a buck that is probably that would score similar. I'm guessing
Mhm.
him in his peak somewhere around that 210 inch type and frame. Like truly on the farms that I've had been able to hunt, and this whole social media thing is crazy because you have people out there going, "Oh, dude, like there's just not as many 180s or 170s as there has been, uh, as there has been." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, I don't know what types of farms you guys are hunting, and I live and hunt in prime Iowa. Do you know
Yeah.
how many deer over 150 I've had within shooting range my entire life? My entire life. Now, 150, I'm going to say 15. Probably
Yeah.
15 deer over 150 I've had within shooting range of a bow. 170, over 170, four. Four deer that would be 170 or over in 30 years that were within shooting range. Now,
Yeah.
seeing them at a distance is something different. And then 200 maybe, just one. Right. And that day that I got in contact with a 200 incher, I put an arrow in it and never found him. Right.
Yeah.
So then the neighbor
Yeah.
killed him the next year. But
Right.
anyway, what I'm getting at is, we have these stories of like really close calls and deer that, one of these deer I was chasing, he showed up as probably like as a 3-year-old, just a genetic freak, right? As a 3-year-old, he was probably 165, 170 inch 3-year-old, typical clean 10, no junk. The next year, like a genetic code must have been unlocked with him and the same frame, but just junk all over his antlers, like non-typical freak.
Yeah.
Like a couple drops off of the tip of the main beams. I think I showed you the picture of him a long time ago. But then I followed this deer, and he lived in this same area, and I hunted him for 2 yeah, I hunted him for 2 years hard, 3 years hard. And I knew the areas that he was running. I had trail camera pictures of this deer moving in and out of certain pieces of property, and I went in and I hunted this deer hard for multiple years and only saw him on the hoof one time, and he was on the next ridge over on the coldest November hunt that I've ever been on. It was like I think it was November 12th one year, and the high that day was -12.
Wow.
And I saw deer all morning long, and he showed up on the next ridge over, and he kind of was going like back and forth. He was crossing a road a lot, actually, into where I believed he was bedding, and then crossing in throughout a 24-hour period. He would cross over to go check does and maybe to feed, and then come back. That's because that's where the egg was at. But I feel like most of the time he crossed the road in the dark. So he would like check his local doe herd first, and I had access to that. And so I would hunt in this big chunk of timber that would lead up to the road, and then he would cross it after dark, and then he would go and check the does over there, feed, and then by the time he was done, he would cross the road early in the morning, and that was the pattern. And so in the mornings, I was hunting on one side of the road. In the afternoons, I was hunting on the same side, but like really close into the bedding areas and stuff. And I just did not connect on this deer. Saw him on the hoof one time. And you get to see the success that people have, right? When they hold their on social media or the
Yeah.
pictures come out and they hold the rack. But that year I put those 3 years, I put a lot of energy into a buck that I never had within shooting range ever. And so it's
Yeah.
just, it's funny. Now, on some of those years, I did on a different part of the farm, I found success, but I got so frustrated with that buck that I was like, I got to go hunt somewhere else. And a decent buck would show up
Yep.
as I'm hunting
Yep.
off of that buck because maybe I didn't have the right wind or something like that. And so I'm sitting there going like, damn, dude. Like, and then he disappears. Like
Yeah.
he just, I believe as a 7-year-old, he disappeared. And then you start to have these conversations, and this is where it becomes like mystical of sorts. The landowner's like, well, I saw a big buck that kind of meets that description over where you were hunting. And then then you start to hear rumors of like, oh, dude, someone shot him out of a truck. They saw him, they
Right.
like spotlighting him. Then you hear rumors of like another landowner. You're talking to a landowner and they're just like, well, I just want to let you know that we have, there was a out of state license and or an out of state license plate was cruising this road and I heard a gunshot. The guy that told me this story, he heard a gunshot. He saw a red dually Dodge Ram with I think a West Virginia license plate pulled into a cattle pasture. They got out, they drove in the cattle pasture, then they drove out real quick after he heard the gunshot. Now, I don't know, right? I'm not a
Right.
forensic scientist. I don't know exactly what happened. And then you got another landowner, like rumor has it, another landowner said that he heard that a guy poached it.
Yeah.
Another guy poached it. And then you don't really know what the true story is, but there's a lot of poaching that goes on in that area too. And then, I've talked to the DNR officers and he's like, yeah, we've confiscated some pretty big deer from poachers in this area over the last 30 years. And and here's an example of that. So I was hunting this buck, I want to say 2000, a different buck in 2017 ish time frame. Yeah. And I forgot what I called him, but he was probably like 26, 27, maybe even 28 inches inside spread.
Oh
Just a
wow.
freaking wide ass buck. And he had a ton of tines. Like I think he was a 6x5, so like an 11 pointer, but just
Mm-hmm.
freaking wide and a lot of points on the one side. And anyway, he disappears. And then the one day I talked to a landowner that lives across the creek, and he's like, "Yeah, I shot him, and I only found his body. Someone was in the
What?
woods. Yep, someone was in the woods, cut his head off, and took off. And he followed the blood trail. Like he's like, I always do this. I always shoot my buck, and then I'll go back to the house. I'll take my camo off. I'll get dressed. I'll have a cup of coffee, whatever. I'll go back out there with my side by side and I'll start following the blood trail. Right. Which is pretty normal. A lot of people do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yep.
And then he follows the blood trail to a headless deer. All right.
That's crazy.
Fast forward 2 years and the DNR gets a search warrant for this dude's house. Some guy, not that guy, but a different person's house who has been known to like be in this area. And what do they find? They find that buck's head in the they like the DNR officer sent me pictures. He's like, "Do you know this buck?" I'm like, 100% I know that buck and I know who shot it too. Like who should get this rack. Like
Right.
it would be awesome if you could give it back. I don't know what the rules are. I think
Yeah.
it has to go to auction or something. But I know the hunter who shot that buck, and he said all he found was the head or the body.
Yeah.
And so this guy, they go into his house, and there's all these giant heads that this guy like poached or found, trespassing while shed hunting and all of that stuff. And so it's wild to me that this is a very long way of saying it's wild to me how some of these deer disappear. They're very known, and then all of a sudden they're gone,
Yeah.
right? And you kind of wonder what happens to them.
Yeah, I mean, we think that a lot, you know. I mean, when we start to see these 5 and 6 year old deer, we wonder what happens to them the next year. But you know, as you were talking, I started thinking about this whole poaching thing and what it is for people. That is it, you know, they just are obsessed with these antlers, or is it they don't want to put in the time? Well, when you're telling me this story about this guy that cuts his head off, I'm like, well,
Mm-hmm.
he's putting more time because he's having to find these deer that he didn't shoot, and he's
Mm-hmm.
just walking aimlessly around the woods or what, you
I
know.
think he
But if
got
it's
lucky.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
that on that
there could
instance.
yeah, there could be that, but I mean, you know, guys from the road, they're obviously just shooting with a gun, you know, so
Mm-hmm.
they're not putting the time in, but there's this
Right.
obsession with it, but then they hide all the stuff. You know, it's
Yeah.
like they're hiding it. So your great obsession and you hide it. For what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. It
Yeah.
just crazy.
It what's there's a lot of rules, like that get broken every year by people. And I always thought you shoot a deer like that, you poach him. And this is a conversation that's been had by in between hunters all the time. I think we probably had this same conversation driving out to Nebraska. But you're sitting there, you poach a deer, if you poached a deer, and then you take him to the taxidermist with some fake tag, and then that tag, the taxidermist isn't going to ask you 1,000 questions. You get that deer
Nope.
taxidermied, or you do the Euro mount or whatever, and you hang it in your house. And then you have
Yep.
to lie about it every single time somebody asks you a question about it. Oh, dude,
Oh,
that's a
I mean,
giant.
it'd be like having, you know, your kid have a tag,
Yeah.
and you go out during youth gun season with your
Mm-hmm.
kid and you shoot that deer. Well, you got to put
Yeah.
your kid's tag on it. I mean, talk
Yep.
about suck. This is I don't know.
Yeah. The other thing, kind of piggybacking off that, is we knew this guy who he was a major, how do I put this? Back in the day, and when I mean way back in the day, I mean like in the 90s, nobody gave a shit about shed antlers. Okay. You could go
Right.
out and shed hunt, nobody cared. And then as the big buck craze and antlers started having value, there was a guy who was a notorious, I guess you would call it a shed poacher, where he would go on to these farms where people were hunting and go get the sheds before anybody else could, right? And he cleaned house a lot of the times until the era of trail cameras and cell cameras. This guy started getting caught a lot, and then he would get charged with trespassing. And I think this one guy had over 10, 15, 20 charges against him throughout the years. And this is where my question kind of comes into play. A guy goes in, the legal system, like you're not going to go to jail for 20 years for trespassing. You know what I mean?
No.
Like
No.
even if you're a repeat offender to the max, there's no like you're going to pay a fine and you're going to get out, right?
It,
And unless the judge wants to somehow throw the book at you. But
right.
typically that doesn't happen. Now, on the only other option is for you to file charges and sue in
Right.
civil court or whatever the case would be. And I think there was a couple times where like landowners all got together and tried to file a suit against some of these guys. And it just blows my mind how, I mean, that's how it used to be. But now, dude, the second you get caught on trail camera, it takes, and you're not supposed to be there. It takes a minute for that picture at its fastest or at its slowest to get to
Slowest.
a phone. Yeah. And then if that landowner, that guy running that trail camera doesn't know you, his first call is going to be to the conservation officer or the sheriff. And before you can even get back to your truck, you're going to get in trouble. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah, it's still pretty gray though, because I mean we had a guy. Let's see, I don't know if it was last year or the year before. So our property that we own has a decent length of a lane to get back to the woods that we hunt, and we have cameras up, and lo and behold, it wasn't a cell camera that was at like the corner where they would
Mm,
come off of our lane and into it. So we didn't see it until maybe a week or two later, but we took the picture, we put it on the computer, and we took the picture of the license plate, and I called the local county police
mm,
officer, and I said, hey, can you find out who this is and what they're doing, because we have people drive around our gate, anything to get back into our woods to hunt it or shed hunt or whatever it is that they're
mhm,
doing. And he looks it up and stuff, and then he says, by law, I can't tell you who it is or anything, so it'd be on you to press charges. So it's like, even if you do catch people, what's the point half the time? Because then you got to spend the time, going to court or anything like that. And
yeah.
as well as I do, like when they steal your trail cameras, it's the same thing. We had a guy that he lives probably half a mile from our property, and he would claim that he would walk all the woods in the area, and he'd walk it with a handgun. And I
Mhm,
mean, so he was just aimlessly trespassing all this
yep.
property, with a handgun, a loaded handgun. And it's like, what are you going to do about that? I mean, you can't,
Yeah.
you try to catch him on camera, but the guy has walked the woods how many years now? He knows where cameras are. He knows where people are when they're there. And I don't know. The
Yeah.
trespassing thing's really bad. And, like you were saying with the shed hunting thing, though, you go back to those 90s and those early 2000s, there was uh, a time when you could get shed hunting permission everywhere. And
Oh,
I
farmers
used,
didn't even care.
no, dude.
Farmers
And,
didn't
and
even care.
and you could walk hundreds of miles if you had it in you,
Oh yeah.
and now, I mean, I can walk thousands of miles and not even find a quarter of the sheds that I used to
Oh
find.
yeah.
It's just they are not there. I know that people are trespassing hands down just
Yeah.
because of the antler. It's pretty
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah. And that kind of brings this whole shed conversation that we've been having. Dude, there's deer. People are documenting deer already dropping antlers this year.
Yep.
The earliest I've ever found an antler would be today. I
Oh,
was helping a buddy set up a tree stand for a late season hunt. This would have been, and I come around this fence crossing, and there's a match set, fresh match set, sitting right on top of this snowpack, and it would have been December 22nd, and shit, I don't know, 2000 and that would have been like 2012 or 11 or something like that. But their
I,
deer are dropping antlers right now.
yeah, they are. It's funny because I was just telling my kids that the other day. I said, in a month we're going to be talking about shed hunting.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to transition heavily out of hunting, and we're going to be starting to look at trail cameras with bucks that have just the pedicles. And,
Yep.
but I don't think I think the earliest I found one was around the 7th or 9th or something like that of January. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, I take my kids, my wife goes with me, we make it a big family ordeal to go shed hunting, and it's fun. But
Yeah.
to that point of the early 2000s, late 90s, there just isn't the antlers that there used to
Mm-mm.
be. I used to be able to go out and grab 10 to 15 antlers every time I was out, and now
Yeah.
it's like you might get 10 in a year.
Yeah. Yep. And I think there's also less deer on the landscape.
I do
Uh,
too. Yeah.
and the places where the deer hold up during the shedding season is going to be on places that are managed for deer,
Right.
that and that have better habitat.
Yep.
Back in the day, one of my best shed hunting days ever, I walked into this. It would have been an 80-acre, completely square farm, and like an ag field, and it had a big drainage, a big buffer drainage running up halfway through it, and then another one kind of coming off the south side again. And so there was one big one little one, and then there was probably like a buffer strip between the fence and the fence in there, and they were stacked in there. And I walked in and I picked up 15 or 16 sheds in the span of about 40 minutes. So
Wow.
I power walked that fence line and went
Yeah.
in, and just imagine what I missed
Yeah.
in there because it was corn and I didn't feel like going and gritting corn stubble. But
Yeah.
they were all sitting in the grass or right off of the grass, and that was a fun day. That was a fun
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. One little other thing we were talking about yesterday is that my son had asked me, how many deer have you shot?
Mm, yeah,
Dude, I have no idea.
yeah,
In the time of hunting, I have no idea. And so then he started to ask me, well, what about all the antlers? I'm like, well, those are shed antlers and stuff. And he's
mm,
like, well, what happened to all the other ones that you shot? Well, they're not bucks. They were
yeah,
does. So if I threw a number out there that I said, if you average 2 a year, and I've hunted 25 years or something, so you'd have about 50 on average, right?
yeah,
And he's like, well, where are the rest of them? And then
yeah,
it turns into this whole competition thing, because then they're like, so who has a bigger buck, you or your brother? And well, I mean, technically, if you measured him out, his is bigger by probably an inch.
yeah,
I said, but quality and big would be, I would take that trophy. And then it turned into the amount of them that we've taken and stuff. So it was just kind of fun, because they
right.
they get pretty intrigued by it. But the one big thing that I take away from it with my kids is, I was telling them last night, it's not about, hey, let's just shoot a deer to shoot a deer just because
Yeah,
we're out. Let's look at these deer as they come in, especially this time of year, because deer could be shedding, like you're saying. Deer
hmm,
could be malnutrition, um, hurting because of the rut and stuff,
right.
or injured because of being shot at, or is it a fawn or a doe, So I try to give them a lesson with that hunt too. But at one point, I can't say that I wasn't like a lot of other guys, that it was a numbers thing,
Hmm,
like how many can you shoot in a year type deal.
yeah,
'Cause it was,
yeah,
but
yeah,
now it's just enjoy it.
yeah. I, that's a great question. I want to think back, but because there were some years where I shot several does, I would say like 3 does
Mhm.
and a buck. And then there were years where I didn't shoot any deer. Like I was 100% in the big buck phase of my life. And I said to myself, I'm going to go shoot a doe tonight. But then I get into the timber and I'm just like, okay, what happens if big buck is just 100 yards away and I ruin this. So
Yep.
I went strictly for bucks. And I bet you throughout the course of my life, and this is 30 years, this would have been since I started hunting when I was 13, but then I don't think I killed a deer. I killed a deer in that time frame, but then I didn't start seriously deer hunting until 2006. And that's when I
Mhm.
started killing my first deer. And so what's that, 20 roughly
About
19
20 is,
seasons? Yeah,
yeah. Yep.
19 seasons since that point. I would say in 19 seasons I've probably killed 20, probably close to 30 deer
Yeah, it's 25 to
in
30 deer.
yeah, in 19 seasons.
Yeah.
So and that includes, that includes does and bucks. So if we're talking bucks, I definitely went through a phase in. So I killed. I'm gonna do this real quick to see if I can do it. 6 I killed a buck. 7 I killed a buck. 8 I did not. 9 I did. 10, 11 I did not. 12 I did. 13, 14, 15 I did not, because I was chasing one buck
Yep.
in those years. 16, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25 I did. So I'm on a 10-year streak right now for killing deer. So I don't know. It's
Go go back to those years when you were really dialed into like shipwreck and stuff like that,
mhm.
and you were chasing one deer. You go back to them for a second, and do you regret focusing so much time on one deer and not filling a tag, not shooting a doe, Do you regret not, just because we don't know here, how many days we got left or how many years we got left as a
Yeah.
person, is this my last deer hunting season or not? Do you regret that at all?
Yeah, it's different because it's a different mindset.
Yeah.
There are points about it, yes. Dude, there was one day where a 150-inch 10-pointer, 4-year-old 10-pointer, standing at 10 yards. I was after this shipwreck buck, you know. The story of shipwreck is I chased this deer who just was genetically superior, giant animal. The first encounter I had with him, he was 170, and then through the next 5 years of chasing this buck, he was in and out of 200 inches. Okay, and so I was 100% focused on this buck and this 90. Well, it was 1 year, it was 90 acres. And then I got permission to the south, and then you add another 45 or 60 acres to that. So, I'm sitting at anywhere between 120 and 150 acres where this deer was partially living. And in that time frame, I was passing deer that I had never shot before. And I kind of regret that portion of it.
Yeah.
But because I passed all of those deer, I got an education from passing those deer and only going after this one deer. So being able, like going into a set and going after one deer and knowing that if a 150-inch 10-pointer showed up, I wasn't even picking my bow up for that buck. And I was just like, that was stupid. But guess what
Yeah.
I gained out of that is a whole bunch of knowledge about how mature deer behave, how they navigate through terrain, how they interact with other deer, big, like older or younger than them. I got to see some amazing things as an observer in the woods that otherwise I never would have been able to see because I was shooting those deer. Now, there's bits and pieces of it, right? I do not regret the education, but I do regret not killing it because there comes a time where drawing back your bow on a deer you plan on shooting, there's some like you only get that from shooting deer. That experience
Right.
from shooting deer. And
Yep.
at that point I wasn't shooting enough bucks. Right.
Yeah.
I was only going after one, and then he showed up. I blacked out with buck fever at 22 yards, and I should have drilled him. Right. I should have smoked that buck. He was 22 yards, completely broadside, and I hit him high, and he lived. But I feel like if I, over the previous years, if I would have shot some of those deer that I had been passing, I would have had more experience in the moment of truth. And that would have led me to being more comfortable when my target deer did eventually step out.
Yeah.
So it's a give
I
and
think,
take.
yeah, it really is. And I think, like listening to you tell your story, it's, I go back to these deer that have come in, these big deer that have come in, and there's not, I would really have to think about this. There's not a single deer over 150 inches that has walked away.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If they did, it's because I spooked them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they got an arrow in them. I mean,
Yep.
150-inch deer is a big deer,
Yeah.
so that experience for me in itself, I go back to this fall here where I shot this 10 point, if that deer comes in and I decide not to shoot him, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
learn about him. Yeah. I mean, to your point, like, you're getting that education, but how many opportunities do you have at a 150-inch deer?
Yeah. Not very
So it's
many.
like not very many, and I can sit here too, though, and say I personally that I am pretty sure of have never seen a 200-inch deer in the wild,
Yeah.
but I also have several 150-inch deer that I've shot. So I don't know. I go back and forth with it. Like, do you let that 150 walk just for that mindset of like, well, what if he shows up next year?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Which is weird for me because now I'm in a stage of my life where I just don't care anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
just want to put arrows in deer at this
Yeah.
point. And the deer that I shot this year, I guess some people would say, you know, what, 125-inch 8-pointer, 100,
Yeah.
maybe 130 if I put the tape to him. And that's well below age class and antler size that I've shot in the past. But like I am I'm an experienced hunter now. Not an experienced hunter. I'm an experienced hunter. And so I just want the experiences. I want to celebrate, you know, the hunt. I want to celebrate the animal and whatever gets me juiced up, you know, I'm going to take the shot these days.
Yeah.
And I'm still going to go after deer and put my tree stands in positions to like kind of connect on a couple, you know, the biggest deers on the property. But if something comes up that catches me on a day that I want to throw an arrow, well, hell, I'm throwing arrows, man. And
Yeah.
I'll
I
be
got
completely happy with it.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with that. You know, I mean, there's
Yeah.
deer that I'm going to chase and there's deer that I'm going to want to, you know, put a tag on. But there's also, you know, like this with having kids and stuff too, that changes that a little bit with, you know, my son shooting his deer this year. I mean, that's just as memorable and
Right.
meaningful to me as me shooting another deer. You know, I'd
Right.
much rather spend my time with watching them go the rungs of the ladder than me
Yep.
shoot another 150, you know.
Yep. Yep. 100%. 100%. Well, I think that's a good place to end it. First off, I want to say thank you to everybody who takes time out of their week to listen to the How to Hunt Deer podcast. If you could do us a huge favor and go to iTunes or go to, holy cow, we forgot to do a commercial
Yeah,
at the
I was
beginning
gonna
of this.
say, yeah.
So we'll just do it now, and then I'll deal with the consequences later. So first off, go support the partners that support this podcast. First off, we have the Muddy DV8 series. Go to Muddy, go to gomuddy.com, click on the apparel and footwear link, check out their footwear, check out all of the hunting clothing that they have, specifically the DV8 series, and you know, take a look at it if you're looking for any last minute Christmas gifts. The next is the Code Blue Scents.
Yep.
So if you're looking for a stocking stuffer, go to codebluescents.com, discount code HTH 20, and that's going to get you 20% off. And they have real and synthetic deer urines. They have the Rope-A-Dope mock scrape kit. They have scent elimination products, all of that stuff there. And now we can go back and say, if you want to do us a huge favor, go to iTunes or Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you download the How to Hunt Deer podcast or listen to the How to Hunt Deer podcast. Leave us a 5-star review. Let everybody know that this is an entertaining and an educational podcast with two guys who just love deer hunting and love the outdoors. And last but not least, I think I'm just going to say Merry Christmas to you and your family, Jason. Merry Christmas to all of the listeners. And we're not going to say Happy New Year yet because we got another episode coming before New Year's. But Jason, dude, Merry Christmas, man.
Hey, Dan, Merry Christmas to you, and thanks for another year. I hope you have all your Christmas shopping done, and and enjoy some food, and hopefully you guys get feeling better. So
There you go. There you go. Appreciate it. Have a good one, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week.